The US dollar might be crumbling, and there are growing indications that the long-standing dominance of the US dollar in global trade may be on the decline. Countries such as China are increasingly filling up their gold reserves, hinting a potential shift away from reliance on the US dollar as a primary currency for international transactions. And a recent report from gold.org says China's gold reserves have risen by 314 tons since November 2022. And it's not just China alone. There are many other countries thinking in the same direction and making moves against the US dollar right now, including Russia, and they are pushing this shift through the BRICS alliance. Now, as we all know, for many decades, every country in the world has had to trade using the US dollar. For example, if China wanted to buy from another country, they had to use the US dollar. If an African country wanted to buy from a European country and vice versa, they still had to use the US dollar. And even European countries who tried to trade amongst themselves had to use the US dollar. But then, everything seems to be changing lately with the dedollarization plan. Now, this is happening partly because of the US government's weaponization of the US dollar. And of course, the dollar payment system, which is used against countries like Russia, Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, Afghanistan, and China. And it even got worse when the US froze over $300 billion in liquid foreign exchange reserves which belonged to Russia in the wake of the Russian invasion of Ukraine around February 2022. This clearly shows that if a country goes against the US foreign policy, they can easily get sanctioned using the US dollar, of course. So with all this happening, it definitely opened the eyes of many other countries worldwide, and I believe that the BRICS might be leading these countries towards a dollar-free trade. Now guys, the concept of de-dollarization has been gaining momentum in the past year and of course in recent months, and it has been fueled by the concerns of the US government's use of the dollar as a tool for imposing sanctions on nations, and as expected, other countries are pushed to explore alternatives and reduce their exposure to the US dollar. One main reason for the US dollar struggle is also linked to the G7 economies that have been in trouble over the past months, like Germany and the UK, who have been grappling with a recession, and of course Japan, whose currency has been facing an imminent collapse. Meanwhile, the BRICS alliance, alongside stronger relationships between countries like China and Russia and the friendly members, keep increasing their ties while trying to limit the US dollar as much as they can. And even in a significant development just back in 2023, approximately 21 countries formally agreed to lessen their reliance on the US dollar for international trade. And just recently in Africa, Zimbabwe introduced a new gold-backed currency. So I believe that all these shifts could have potential implications, particularly against the backdrop of escalating US debt and rising interest rates. Now, even Saudi Arabia, who has been a long-time ally of the United States, is currently contemplating the use of non-dollar currencies for all transactions, with the Saudi finance minister who even announced a little while back that the country was open to using currencies other than the US dollar in oil contracts, and this could clearly be seen with stronger ties that the oil-rich country has been building with China, for example. But the issue here is this, guys. If Saudi Arabia pushes through with this, it might cause trouble for the long-standing agreement between the US and Saudi Arabia, which has been standing for a while, and specified that the US would supply Saudi Arabia with military support and OPEC would use the US dollar in all its oil sales. Now, another problem is this: most banks globally have no choice but to comply with US sanctions because they cannot afford to let go of correspondent banking relationships with the US banks, since most global currencies are pegged to the US dollar. And the bank issue is definitely one of the big problems that will be faced by most countries trying to move away from the US dollar. And that right there is one of the main reasons why most countries are trying to decouple themselves from the US dollar. Now, China itself has pursued de-dollarization efforts to reduce global reliance on the US dollar to trade and financial transactions. And how have they been doing this? They have been doing this through partnerships with known Western regional and multilateral groups such as the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the BRICS. And of course, they do this by advocating for the use of local currencies in trade globally. And we should all know that China is the biggest trading partner with the world, so they can easily push for this since they trade with many countries globally. And this is an effort by a growing number of countries to reduce the role of the US dollar in international trade. Again, countries like India, China, Brazil, Malaysia, and Bolivia, among others, are seeking to set up trade channels using currencies other than the almighty dollar. Let's take Nigeria for example, which is Africa's biggest economy. Nigeria had even been contemplating on a shift from the US dollar to the yuan due to its huge depreciation rate in recent months. And if that happens, it would definitely be a big blow for the US dollar. Now, the US dollar has been the world's reserve currency for decades, but as we can all see, its dominance is clearly fading away. Sanctions against Russia, for example, have spurred other countries into considering a backup currency for trade globally. And US monetary policies and structural shift in the global oil trade also contributes largely to the desire for a shift. Now, millennials, we need to understand that one of the main reasons why the US dollar has been the world currency is due to the confidence that has been bestowed upon the US dollar by many countries around the world. And as this confidence in the dollar is fading due to the multiple use of the dollar's dominance to sanction other countries and of course place tariffs, many countries are quickly losing their confidence in the US dollar, and it is definitely hurting the dominance of the dollar globally. Now, the BRICS, which is made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, led by Russia this year, has been discussing how to escape the dollar dominance to enable a more free trade for all using other currencies. And they have even been thinking of a unified currency, and this will be a huge blow for the US, because if these countries that depend on the US dollar switch to other options, it will be a big problem, as the US debt and interest rates will be highly affected, and of course that would directly affect the US economy. Now, the former president of Brazil and current chair of the New Development Bank, Dilma Rousseff, even said they need to find ways to avoid being dependent on a single currency. But now, here's the problem, guys. Many have been forecasting the end of the dollar hegemony for over half a century and even beyond, for reasons that have to do with difficulties usually encountered while trading with the US dollar. But the dollar has always stayed strong and consistent. So the question now is this: are we really going to see that change this time? Is the change imminent? Will the US dollar finally crumble? Now, with the current rise in interest rates, the BRICS, the economic turmoil in the US, alongside the huge loss in confidence towards the US dollar globally, there's definitely some trouble on the horizon for the US dollar. Nevertheless, let's see how it all plays out, and of course, I'll keep you guys posted. So if you want to keep on seeing more updates on this topic and of course many more, feel free to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, this is Willen. See you next time.